Hey Exiles, it's time we discussed one of Path of Exile 2's most glaring issues, the state of melee versus ranged combat. As a preface, it's important to note one of the pivotal reasons Grinding Gear Games decided to craft Path of Exile 2 was to fix the issue we've seen for quite some time with melee in Path of Exile 1. However, nearly a year into early access, we're witnessing the same problems emerge in PoE 2 with melee combat, and it's hard to watch, to be honest. While I'm massively enjoying the game on my melee character, especially with the direction of 0.3 and its subsequent patches, I'm worried we might be leaning too much into the game design that transformed melee combat into a difficult to stomach playstyle for many in PoE 1 and even other isometric ARPGs. Before we delve into that topic, we must also address the elephant in the room, Path of Exile 2's lack of melee-based weapons, skills, and archetypes. It's true, we have a bunch of options missing. Right now, if you'd like to play melee, you need to use mace, quarterstaff, unarmed, shield, or some spear skills. Beyond that, there's nothing else, and only the center-left portion of the passive skill tree caters to pure melee, or more accurately, the warrior or barbarian fantasy. Skill and weapons-wise, we're missing swords, axes, flails, claws, daggers, and melee shape-shifting skills, alongside classes and ascendancies that shall likely embody melee playstyles like the Duelist and the Marauder. Alongside the limited options, there's another prudent fact. The right-hand side of the tree is just more powerful, both offensively and defensively. You've more options to scale your damage, survivability, movement speed, and plenty of other vectors of character power, except Magic Find. This definitely further contributes to the failing of melee, especially mace lovers, getting shafted for now. Finally, before we discuss the gameplay elements holding back melee, and I truly think those are the bigger ticket issues, we must also mention the unfortunate need for Grinding Gear Games to associate downsides with a decent chunk of both melee skills and passive nodes, specifically related to maces. This is a result of the developers searching for a very specific feel when using maces, one that appeals to a segment of the player base. While this is great, and we know they'll never be able to please everyone, I still feel they can accomplish the weighty feel of wielding maces while not inhibiting character power when allocating notable passive nodes in certain pieces of gear. As showcased by numerous warrior and mace enjoyers, they definitely are powerful and overcome the hardest challenges in the game, but I'd argue the punishing, narrow path many warrior and mace users must take pushes away more players than it entices. While all this contributes in some manner, and everything will be way better when more options are available, I'm afraid there's still a fundamental set of issues at the heart of this struggle melee enjoyers have in Path of Exile 2, despite still liking the game. It's similar to the passive drawbacks, but at a larger gameplay scale. Now, I've always been enticed by melee combat as opposed to ranged playstyles, even in Path of Exile 2. In 0.1, I played a quarterstaff invoker. It was an absolute blast. In 0.2, I tried a spear Amazon. I bounced rather swiftly. In 0.3, I returned to invoker using hollow palm technique after a stint as an acolyte of Chayula. It was a return to greatness, and it matches very well alongside the other game I'm currently playing, Hades 2, which I highly recommend to everyone. The more active playstyle is just my home. It reminds me of more action-oriented games such as Smash, or the just mentioned Hades series, or even Guild Wars 2. I'm just an active combat fan. Constantly moving around the battlefield, actually smashing into enemies, feeling the impact of your hits and dueling up in the monster's face, great. Even in Dungeons & Dragons, I always gravitate toward martial classes, leaving arcane professions for my wife. Compared to ranged, it's almost always just more fun to me. When I see melee gameplay, it just wraps me around its finger. I need to play it. And here's the huge but. Melee is ridiculously more punishing and difficult in Path of Exile 2 with the game mechanics the developers are implementing at a swift pace, especially with 0.3, the Third Edict. Everything works swimmingly in Act 1. Moving from the riverbank all the way to the Wicked Wolf Geonor, then into Act 2 and the Vestiri. Yes, Jamanra is an absolute menace, but Act 3 isn't that difficult, it's just long, and Doriani is a beyond fair fight. Then you hit the interludes and it starts to truly, truly hurt. Monsters become faster. Pack sizes grow and grow and grow, and the screen becomes an absolute cluster of popping bodies, scattering ice shards, and sizzling corpses, alongside a dizzying doom we'll discuss momentarily. It becomes a kill or be killed game of scaling area of effect attacks while you're killing monster packs, and a more measured gameplay experience when fighting bosses. This would be fine if this is the type of game they're deciding to go for. Yet again, here's another massive but. The already ridiculously bad visual clarity is amplified by 2 more catastrophic additions specifically for Melee. First up, we have more on-death effects. These would not be a problem if they were well telegraphed like many were made to be after critiques in 0.1. However, with the addition of 0.3 and Abyssal League specifically, grinding your games are making the same mistakes. There's an unhealthy number of on-death effects, and they're incredibly difficult to see. Either they're tiny puddles with the same color as the ground or the monsters you're fighting, or they're so great in number it doesn't even matter what they look like. Once you pop that group of enemies, you better get out fast or you're just going to die in melee range. This is almost never a problem for ranged characters. Second, there's ground effects. What are these ridiculous things? Yeah, we're gonna cause a scene here. These are everywhere. They are on rare monsters as modifiers. They spawn as waystone mods. They are even used in some boss mechanics, and they are extremely prevalent in the newest every map content in the game, Abyss, while also being various shades of green on top of green monsters. These are absolutely egregious, and while I understand what ground effects are meant to do, to change the terrain of the battlefield and force movement, the way Melee, and especially the mace skills are designed, causes these to be the absolute bane of all Melee's existence. With skills that lock you in place, or are extremely slow moving, or put you right on top of a monster wherein a ground effect is likely to be, as a Melee player, you just feel begrudged dealing with this all the time. I seriously think this right here is what pushes the Melee risk versus reward ratio over the edge in many cases, especially once you enter PoE2's endgame and the visual clarity dies. Waystones contain more ground effects, and there's more rare monsters with ground effect affixes overall. It's rather hilarious. Melee users constantly deal with all these debilitating, difficult to work around effects, while ranged characters often only run into issues with all these things when they are picking up loot. So I could more fairly compare the various playstyles, I've been pushing another character through Path of Exile 2, a minion-ish witch, and oh my goodness is the difference apparent by the second monster overrun area. Even early on, danger is at an all-time low, power is at an all-time high, and I won't lie, I quite enjoy Unearth and these little scorpion skellies leaping at enemies. It's quite satisfying. This sentiment, as I've gauged across the community, is shared. Melee just has a mountain of critical feedback, a slew of things working against it, even though folks like myself are enjoying playing it, which spurs me to think, just how much fun would I have if I constantly wasn't slowed by chilled ground or a temporal bubble, or on the verge of dying from burning ground, and instead in real danger from the attacks of monsters. That'd be the martial dream. Well, that and swords in Path of Exile 2. All this talk can boil down to this. Going in Melee is inherently more risky, and the risk does not seem to be worth the reward presently, and we have limited ways to lower that risk given how damage scales and how absent clarity is in PoE2 right now. I'd be remiss to not voice some basic solutions here, even though I'm rather confident the clever people at Grinding Your Games have already discussed them internally, and at times publicly. First, loose up movement restrictions on melee skills. Every melee skill wherein you're able to move, most quarterstaff skills, some spear ones, rolling slam, and leet slam, those feel great at best and decent at worst. Why can we not move while using mace basic attack? How about when letting loose a mighty sunder? Embrace the movement inherent to Path of Exile 2. The dynamic combat is the best part of the game, especially in boss fights, and when monsters move as quickly as they do and ground effects are snapping across the screen, we should be able to shift around. Second, continue sprucing up the left-hand side of the tree. It has more drawbacks and less scaling options compared to the right side, even if we just limit it to the center right. Third, ensure on-death effects are visible and apparent. There are monsters and effects done well. Then there are abyss monsters. The clarity on these needs to be better. Make the colors contrast. Give them big audio cues, something. Fourth, chill out on the ground effects. Decrease their prominence from rare monsters and waystone affixes. Make them more punishing if needed, but don't make them everywhere on the map. Even with the reduction in 031, they are still ridiculously notable. And always keep this in mind when balancing, especially for melee. It's visual clarity. Everything outlined here feeds into this. As melee users, we will be in the thick of monsters. How can we ensure our characters are at the forefront and we know what's going on? Is there a way to make that happen? Or has that gone out the window now that we're decently far into endgame and this is the design direction of PoE 2? I suppose we'll see in 0.4 how it continues. So Exiles, what are your thoughts? Do we just need more options, or does it appear like the game is fundamentally slanted in the favor of ranged playstyles with the way certain gameplay elements are designed, even though the focus of Path of Exile 2 was supposed to improve the melee playstyle? Was my entire video a load of rubbish? Let me know in the comments below. The best way to support the channel is hitting the like button, leaving a comment below, and subscribing with the bell notification on to be alerted for all future Path of Exile content. As always, thanks for watching. Watch this video right now on the reception to the 031 patch for PoE 2. Stay sane and have fun.